What's going on, everybody? Aiden from Birds vs. Boys here, coming to you on another day of free agency in the Eagles. Howie Roseman had preached patience, and we're starting to see it pay off a little bit. I think the strategy for what the Eagles is doing is quite clear. So I wanted to go over the signings of the day. No matter how small or how big they may be, we got some on the board. Let's talk about it all. And then let's go over the overall strategy for the Eagles in free agency. I think with each and every move, it is pretty clear with what they are trying to do and why that matters for the rest of the offseason, for draft night, and for the upcoming season as well, so they can continue this momentum as a successful franchise. So, let's start here. Adoree Jackson is the most recent signing that the Eagles had today. The corner, he was most recently with the Giants. I've always liked Adoree Jackson going back to USC. So he was a big name. He was really electric to watch back when he was in college. So I like the signing from that perspective. It's a flashy name that's easy to root for. But the baseline of it all, I think he could play that Isaiah Rodgers role where I don't know if he starts for this team, but of the guys they've signed thus far, I think he's the most likely one to make the team. And all of the people have low guaranteed numbers on their contracts. He is no different to that. I think he has a low guarantee. I think last year he signed like 1.25 or something with the Giants. Something similar this year with the Eagles as well. Low guaranteed money for just 1 year. But I do think that he could play that Isaiah Rodgers role. And what I mean by that is Rodgers would come in, Slay missed time with a knee injury this past year. Quinyon Mitchell went out in the divisional round with a shoulder stinger, and Rodgers had to step in and play. So Rodgers never played the full 17-game schedule, but you did hear his name a lot because if Slay got banged up. He even played the Packers wildcard game, if you remember. Slay hurt his wrist. He was out for a few series. Rodgers stepped in. So he was never like your full-time starter, but they did need to utilize him at points in the way. And it was nice to have a corner that was dependable, who had been on an NFL field before. And you can get that with Adoree Jackson. He's played meaningful NFL snaps. I don't know if you want him to be your full 17-game starter plus playoffs, but at the same time, it is nice to have a guy waiting in the wings, kind of like your bullpen pitcher who could pitch you like the 7th or 8th inning. He's never going to be your closer, but you'd at least like to have a veteran like him who can throw high leverage innings, and I like that about Adoree Jackson. He's only 26, so he's still really young. He was drafted back in 2020, and he does not count against the comp picks because of how low his cap hit is. I think that's the biggest thing and is going to be a trend throughout all of the signings, and was especially clear today. The other big signing, well, big, I don't know, it wasn't a blockbuster, but we'll call it big. Joshua Uche, the defensive end edge rusher, he is signing with the Eagles. He was with the Chiefs, but primarily you'll probably know him from his time with the Patriots. He was traded from the Chiefs and didn't really play there. He has flashed in the past, so I think the potential is there. This more so, I think Adoree Jackson's the biggest name, but this guy could have the most potential to maybe be that low risk, high reward that does pay off. I think the ceiling is higher on Uche. I think the floor is higher on Adoree Jackson, if that makes sense to everybody. Kind of maybe feels a little Zach Bonish, where we don't talk about this signing at the time, but we go down the road and we're like, hey, thank goodness they made that signing. Now, I'm not trying to hype him up. I'm not trying to put unreasonable expectations on his name. He had a great 2022 season. He had 11 sacks that year. He hasn't done a ton since then. That's been super productive. It didn't work out with the Chiefs. But again, you're getting a guy for 1 year at maximum $5 million. So this is another one where you're not breaking the bank to make it happen. And it's at a position where we like Nolan Smith. We like Jalyx Hunt. But at the same time, there needs to be more bodies than just those two. We're not talking really good players are needed at that position. We're talking players in general. They just don't have the numbers at that position. So it was good to see them go out and get somebody like that who could flash, who could really play that backup role where he's not going to get maximum starter level snaps, but you do think in that role he could potentially be productive, where he's kind of getting the snaps that Jalyx Hunt had coming up, or even Bryce Huff was getting 5 to 6 snaps a game at the end of last year. As for Huff, if you talk to Howie Roseman off the record, I think he would pray to every God that you believe in that he could get off of that contract. I don't see a way in which it happens. They're trying to shed salary. If he could shed that like a snake sheds skin, he would. I don't know how they're going to be able to do it. He wasn't playing and he gets paid like a starter. Kind of a tough sell. Sharks, today I'm looking for an investment of a 5th-round pick. My product is a defensive end who lost his starting spot, was a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl, has 3 people at his position who outplayed him on our team alone, and he will get paid the same amount or more than those guys. Do I have any investors? No? Okay. Thank you for your time today, Sharks. That's how the trade proposal goes for Bryce Huff. So not a lot of confidence that they'll be able to move on for him. He'll be on the roster, but I don't even know if I count him in the bodies. Like, he was a healthy scratch. Like, they weren't even playing him at the end of that. And just one quick thing on this, because I saw something about this saying that this means that BG might not be back just because of the numbers wise alone. I don't expect BG to be back because I expect him to retire. If he wanted to come back, I think he'd be back. I don't think the numbers wise he would be out because they signed Uche. And I think this report was assuming that they take an edge rusher in the draft. And I think it's dangerous to make assumptions like that because of, one, where you're drafting, and the edge rusher might not be there, right? Like, we're picking at the end of every round in the early round. So do we expect a premium edge rusher to be available? And 2, there are other positions that they may want to focus on. They traded a productive safety this week. They need help at defensive tackle with Milton Williams leaving. They probably need another corner, even after signing Adoree Jackson. I know the plan is to start Kaylee Ringo, but still at the same time, like, they lost Rodgers and they lost Darius Slay. So they're down 2 and they signed 1. So numbers wise, there are other positions that they'd like to fill. So I wouldn't operate under the assumption that Brandon Graham is gone because they signed Uche. I more so think he's gone because he wants to be gone and he wants to move on and become a media analyst, much like Jason Kelce. And I think he'll have a lot of success doing that. And I will see him for his jersey retirement night. But, back to Uche. Again, I thought that was a little Zach Bonish, hopefully, and the potential is there. Today, I felt a lot better about the signings. Yesterday, I was feeling about some of those guys like A.J. Dillon. I'm thinking to myself, in August, we'll talk about this, and I'll forget that they're on the team, and by September, they won't be on the team. Like, it was like Devin White, Rashad Penny vibes with what was signed yesterday, and I feel a lot more confident today about Uche and Adoree Jackson that they make this team and contribute in some form or fashion. So that's good to see. And overall, I understand this strategy, and I like it quite a bit for a team that has already, I'll keep saying this all offseason when people ask what the Eagles' plan is. They concluded their plan. The major plan has already, this is the minor plan. The Ocean's 11 type scheme and heist has already been done. They've left the casino with the money. The plan now is how they plan to live life after robbing the casino. They have done all of the heavy legwork. It's done. The core is here. Now they have to fill out the roster. So I don't think you're going to see any major things. But what the plan is, at least in this sense that I like, is the attention to detail on draft picks. They now have 20 in the next 2 drafts. And here's why that is important. Because what made this team successful? It wasn't going out and overspending on guys. I love Milton Williams. Giving him $26 million a year would be really tough. I love Josh Sweat. Giving him over $75 million guaranteed or $75 million on his contract, that is really rough. What the Eagles did really well is get people through the draft that they could start and become reliable starters. But how did they get some of those guys, if we remember? They needed trade chips. They needed draft picks so that they could be aggressive in drafts to move up to get their guy. Go back and look at this. They had to trade up for Devontae Smith. They had to trade up for Jalen Carter. They had to trade up for Cooper DeJean. They even had to trade up for Kaylee Ringo, who we think might be a starter this year. So they had draft capital. And they turned that draft capital. It's not necessarily with these 20 picks taking 20 players. That's not foreseeable. It's not feasible either. But what they were able to do was get aggressive and target specific players. Now you've got a reliable starter that you're not paying a lot. You didn't have to shell out in free agency. That doesn't cost you comp picks down the road. So you can recycle this process and keep it rolling. And you've got that productive level starter on a rookie contract. It's how they've gotten a lot of guys, and they have had some luck with it. Jalen Carter should have never fallen to pick 9 for them to move up. Devontae Smith probably shouldn't have fallen to pick 10 when they moved up. Quinyon Mitchell absolutely shouldn't have been there in the 20s, 22. Again, they didn't have to trade for him. The fact that he fell in general is crazy. Cooper DeJean should not have been there at pick 40. So they've had some luck with it, but they did a really good job of targeting those guys, recognizing that they could contribute and recognize that they could contribute quickly in going and getting them. That's the strategy. That makes sense. And I think every team is going to realize that, say, minus the Bengals, who are living in 2008. But every other team, I think, is going to start to realize this, where as these cap numbers go up, and I think everyone's been it's the shock value of some of these numbers has been crazy on us this week. And I think a lot of teams are going to realize, hey, I don't want to be the big winner in free agency. I want to be the big winner in January and February. And it seems like a lot of the teams that are big winners in free agency are the teams that were big losers in October, November, December. They have so many holes to fill, and they're trying to throw money at the problems to fix it. And another thing with the Eagles, with being guys on the rookie deals, it's a lot of young guys. And I'm okay with playing young guys. And come back to this clip when Kaylee Ringo gets toasted and Sidney Brown doesn't look like he knows what he's doing coverage-wise at safety. Come back to this clip and roast me if you will. But I will live and die with the young guys getting out on the field and seeing what they're able to do and dealing with their cap hits, saying less of being strapped to these veterans who they're best. Like Josh Sweat is a great example. I love him and I love what he turned into. Can I say that his most productive and most valuable football is ahead of him? He's getting paid the most he's ever paid, and his most valuable play is not ahead of him. He's not going to ascend to another level. You saw his best level. It was the Super Bowl. It was the past year. That is the best you're going to get out of Josh Sweat at age 29. So another thing with the Eagles is they have a very young roster, and everyone's saying they're in a win now mode, right? How do you continue that win now mode? Be the team that's younger. Be the team that's more athletic than a lot of these other teams, instead of anchoring yourselves to pricey veterans. And I think the Eagles have figured that out, and I'm very, very happy with that. Right now, they have 2 guys on offense when the season starts would be in their 30s. Dallas Goedert would be one of them, and he turns 30. The other is Lane Johnson, so I think we're okay there. And then we've got the oldest starter on defense at the current time is Zach Bond, who is 28. I'm okay with everyone on this team being 25, 26. Perfect. It's perfect to me. So I really, really like the strategy. I know these aren't home run picks, but at the end of the day, I like what they did today. I think those guys could actually have a reason to contribute to this team. I've liked these play. I've liked Adoree Jackson. I've liked the flashes you've seen from some of these guys. Best case scenario, they turn into Zach Bond. And hopefully, I think most reasonable, realistic case scenario, they contribute to this defense in some way. And we continue this cycle with attacking comp picks, attacking draft picks, drafting our guys, and running this back and getting deeper and deeper through the draft. I love it. So another day of free agency in the books. We're coming up on the weekend here, so we'll see if there's any splashes over the weekend. We'll keep everybody up to date. And then going into next week, we have some interviews lined up so that we'll talk about everything Eagles with free agency thus far. And it's right around the corner. It's getting to be April. We know what that means. It's draft season, and more particularly, it is mock draft season. I can't wait to get into it. We'll probably start those in the coming weeks. So I appreciate everybody who's followed along this week. More content to come in this Eagles Super Bowl offseason. Talk to you guys soon.